Let's talk about the Fujifilm X100v, the most in-demand and talked about camera in the photography community this year. But what's the hype all about? I've personally owned the X100v for just over a year, and it has essentially been my everyday camera for just documenting life around me. In short, the Fujifilm X100v is a compact camera with a retro design that appeals to many enthusiasts. It features a 26 megapixel APS-C sensor, a fixed 23mm f2 lens. It also has a hybrid viewfinder that you can switch between an optical and electronic. And personally, I think that little viewfinder feature is a little gem. So none of those features are really extraordinary, so why has this camera received extraordinary hype? And before I give you my extremely biased opinion, I wanted to speak to some other X100v users to find out what they have to say. Why did you buy the X100v and how do you use it?
Whenever I've been out with like a bigger DSLR, this is awkward, this is heavy, it's in my bag. That might make a cool photo, but I've got to go in my bag to sort it out, so I'm not going to.
I was using my X-T3 loads, but whatever lens I took out for that, I always wished they had the other one. I knew it was 35, there was no complication, that was what I was going out to shoot with.
I just use it for life, for me, for even if I'm just going to the shop to buy some milk, I'm probably taking the camera.
I had no idea what the camera was like. I like 35mm, so I'm just going to get it. Ever since then, I've fallen in love with street photography to like a completely new level. Typically, I never really used to carry, for example, my Sony a7 III, my main camera. I never used to just carry that around with me, and the lenses are always kind of a bit heavy and clunky, and it wasn't nice to carry with me, especially if I didn't have a backpack or anything. It just wasn't comfortable. I literally just throw this over my shoulder and I don't even know it's there.
I saw the JPEG possibilities with it. That was probably the bit that first got me interested in it. And then realizing it had features like ND filter, leaf shutter, stuff like that, got me interested enough to actually want to buy it.
In your instance, why did you sell the X100v?
It definitely did what I needed it to do. For street photography, it was fantastically low profile, beautiful optics, it's just a fantastic camera, and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
Not the most important thing, but there was nothing it could do that my X-T4 can't do. It's a spot-on option, but it's not the only option.
Would you recommend the X100v to other people?
It just depends how badly you want it, really. Like, there are other alternatives, so potentially look at that, really.
There is that hype around it, and I think you've got to want to have that limitation of the fixed focal length. Like, it's not the fact that it's the sexy body that attracts it to me, it is the fact that it's uber functional, and it just does exactly what it says on the tin.
I don't think it's worth the money. It is definitely overpriced for what it is. You can be inspired by the principle of the X100 series, you know, small, compact, but there are alternatives that share those that, I don't know if they've spiked in price, but I imagine not to the extent of the X100. So
it's definitely harder to recommend it at the minute, given how hard it is to get hold of. It would put me off personally if I was to buy it now, because I was pretty lucky when I bought it a year ago that there was not so much hype. It was easy to get. Used prices were cheaper than new ones, and I think I spent about £900 on it, which you just can't do now.
With all that being said, do you think the X100v is overhyped?
Without a shadow of a doubt, yes. It's definitely overhyped. I guess this is how social media works. Nothing can be hyped this much and live up to it, I'd probably say.
I think it is overhyped. I think it has this, I don't know, allure around it that is indescribable, but at the same time, it is the best camera I own, and it's the camera I want to go out and shoot with every single day.
This just happens to be the product that everyone's kind of fallen in love with, and it's just the one that's kind of rocketed. There are other options available.
I sold that X100V for more secondhand than I bought it new. It's not overhyped as a camera, but it is overhyped as a fashion accessory.
For many, many people, there are probably better alternatives. Things like the ND and leaf shutter, for many people, I think are reasonably gimmicky for everyday life. There's a lot of other cameras out there, especially at the price point, that are probably better picks. It's a very good camera, I enjoy it, but probably overhyped at this point.
That's the hardest thing about this whole conversation, is that it's like, I do think it's overhyped, but it's by far my favourite camera. But yeah, it's mad because then you get people that are like, bro, just get an X-T5 because that's got the double flippy screen and you can put as many different lenses on it. But it's like, yeah, but it just looks like a bigger camera. And it's not as fun as like the small little boy.
You know, there's other cameras in that very similar form factor, but that's my favourite one.
As you may have figured out, this isn't a detailed X100V review. I've made many videos over the months and there are hundreds of videos on YouTube of people sharing the pros and cons in detail about this camera. But what I can share is my opinion on why I think this camera has received so much hype as of recently. The fixed 23mm lens is great for street and everyday documentary photography. It may not be the best choice for other specific types of photography like landscapes, portraits or products, but that isn't who this camera is for. The hype might make this camera sound like it's the best thing for everything, and that simply isn't true. It's quite a limited camera and it's not designed to be used by every photographer. Something I have heard from many X100V photographers is that it makes them fall back in love with photography. And the reason for that, I think, is that this camera is zero faff. It's very much used as a point and shoot camera. It's very easy to carry around and you're not paralyzed by choosing a lens, which means we can forget the complexities of photography and gear and get back to what matters, the small everyday moments. I find that when I use a more impressive or complicated setup like my Canon R6, I'm looking past the smaller details and I'm focusing more on the bigger projects. Whereas if my X100V is handy, those coffee shop visits, those morning walks, and those family dinners are moments I will capture and remember because it's easy and the camera is fun to use. And then that gets me thinking, how do you even put a price on that? And this is probably the most important part of this whole discussion and something photographers probably don't talk about enough. We can label the specs, the size, the weight, the physical properties, the software that's inside the camera. Those things have a market value. But what we can't put a label on is the feeling. What is that camera's emotional value to you as the user? And I've taken some of my favorite photos with my X100V. And how do I put a price on those? They don't have monetary market value. Whether it's an impressive candid street photo or just a small moment with my family, the thing that mattered the most was that I had a camera with me because it simply feels good to use it. The specs can of course be found in multiple different cameras. The X100V doesn't boast any unique features that can't be found on other cameras. If you want film simulations and cool JPEGs, there are lots of other Fujifilm cameras offering that. And if you want a compact fixed lens camera, there are many other camera brands selling them. The one thing nobody can tell you for definite about this camera is if you will get that feeling I'm trying to describe. And that feeling is a driving force to why I recently bought the Leica Q2. For pretty much all the reasons as the X100V, I loved using that for everyday situations. And the Q2 offers the same use case, but even more on the luxury end. But the Q2 isn't being overhyped right now, mainly because it immediately disqualifies anyone buying a camera within a budget. But Leica are wildly known for their expensive cameras, and that's clearly part of their identity and their branding. However, the X100V is more accessible, meaning it reaches more people and in return, more hype. Here's the issue now though. YouTubers, including myself, maybe a couple of viral TikToks and Instagram reels, have made this camera appear to be the camera, when in fact it is just a camera that a lot of people use. Combine that with Fujifilm not being able to keep up with supply and for whatever reason falling back on production means that we have the classic problem of supply and demand. You always want what you can't have, and therefore increasing the price of the X100V on the second-hand market to ridiculous levels. I've seen people list this camera for $3,000, which is just bonkers given that the retail was $1,300 or $1,400. Because now it feels like people who have gained an interest in photography or new enthusiastic beginners might want to buy this camera thinking that it will make them a better photographer, or they will quite literally take better photos with it. And that's where I see people being disappointed and therefore the camera being overhyped. The gear we use does not make us better photographers, our awareness does. And I made a video all about that, so if you're interested in improving your awareness skills as a photographer, then it should pop up somewhere around here, and yeah, check it out. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video, very casual, just sharing my thoughts on the recent hype of the X100V. I do personally think it's a wonderful camera, but it's not for everyone. So hopefully this has given you some food for thought, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.